All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's December 9th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and then showing them the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. So today we have a very special edition of Office Hours. It's the end of the year, and we have somebody that we've been working pretty closely with. Joining us today is the CTO and founder of Cloudsmith, and he's or co-founder of Cloudsmith, and he's one of the leading in Cloudsmith is one of the leading cloud-native package management solutions out there. I invited Lee to join us today because we've been a very happy customer of theirs for much of this year. And by we, I mean Cloud Posse. And I really like to bring on guests that, we've kicked the tires of their product, we know it inside and out, and want to give them the opportunity to reach our community because I think everyone can benefit from that. So we're going to have an open conversation with Lee today about his experience founding the company as a founder, his experience as a hardcore engineer on the back end, implementing some of this stuff, and some of the problems they're working to solve and challenges they've had along the way. At the end, we're going to turn this over to everyone else to ask questions to Lee about that. Also, the format's a little different than our other office hours, where we usually turn the floor over to anyone to answer questions about anything. Today, we're not doing that. It's going to be very topical, specifically on Cloudsmith. So before we get into the actual interview here, I wanted to make a quick announcement about next week's office hours. So next week, we're going to have a representative from HashiCorp, Env0, Scalar, and Spacelift joining us to talk about Terraform collaboration and automation software, which we're calling tacos for short. So please make sure you register for that by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours to listen to that. And that's going to be next week. All right. So today we have our very special guest speaker, and we're going to get into some of the details here with him. Before I do that, I just did want to mention one more thing, that we are recording this session so that we can post it to our podcast and YouTube channel, and you can register for these live and interactive sessions in the future by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up with an email that you can share with your team. All right, so Lee, nice to have you on the show here. How's it going, man? Oh, you're muted, Lee.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
unmute myself.
Forgot I tricked you there.
Ask me a question, but keep me muted. It's a classic technique. Eric, Thank you very much for welcoming me to the show. I'm really excited to be here, and it's quite late for me, quite early for you. There's a bit of a time difference between the two places.
Where are you based again?
So we are predominantly based in the UK. Most of us are in Northern Ireland, so we're basically in UTC. And it's just past 35 of 7 p.m.
Yeah, it's not every day we get to talk to startups from your neck of the woods, so that's cool. So what is Cloudsmith? Why should people care?
Okay, so at Cloudsmith, it's a digital frontier to reshape the human condition. Oh, actually, wait, that's wrong. We actually describe it as a friendly neighborhood package management service, and basically we're here to help people securely build, manage, and deliver their software all over the world. That's the short of it. It gets a lot longer.
Yeah, no, and this has gotten very what's the word? Competitive. Now, GitHub is offering package management. People for years have been rolling their own package management. Cloud Posse was doing it for the last 2 years. Cloud Posse has a Linux distribution ourselves of DevOps tools. And we were rolling our own for a really long time, and that was a big pain in the butt. So when I discovered Cloudsmith I thought it was too good to be true. So I guess, what drove you guys to thinking about building a package management hosting service? And, you know, are those the same reasons you're building it today?
Yeah, it's a bit of a story, so you'll bear with me. I'll not take too long, but we actually need to rewind back a little bit just to sort of describe how we got here. So going back 2 startups ago to my first startup, this is my third one. In the 2000s, we were running what was a very popular at the time search engine for Usenet, also known as NNTP, or Network News Transport Protocol, which
Totally remember
existed before
that.
the internet,
Yeah.
right? That we could talk about that all night. I'm not going to, but I'm not here to talk about that. At least that's another topic for another time. But what I can say that no matter how awesome I think it was at the time, it was very not cloud native. Let's say, since that wasn't even really a thing back then. But I do recall sort of the emergence of things like Simple Storage Service (S3), quickly followed by Elastic Cloud Compute (EC2) in 2006, and just being an absolute awe of it. We'd spent years building services that everybody did back then based on metal with real servers that you had to physically take somewhere and actually put them in, install them, and run that and keep them up. Remember that, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
rolling forward a little bit, at our second startup, we were building on a platform to automatically build financial exchange products. Really not very interesting, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But one of the things that we mandated whenever we went into that is thinking back on my time about running a service that was predominantly on metal and how much heartache that involved. We decided that we would utilize this thing. Let's go out and build something that's completely virtual. It doesn't have a place. It's not physical. There's no servers. Not even one. So it was mandated everything to be 100% in the cloud. So we built up this expertise around building and running things in AWS and over time other clouds. And when we arrived at the part where it was a spectacular failure, by the way, this startup. So at some point we it's the best learning thing, right? But anyway, when we arrived at the part where we needed to go broke, go home, or pivot into something else, sort of roughly in 2015, we looked at everything that we had built over that time and also our corpus of knowledge and and expertise that we had. A lot of it was around packaging and distribution. So our code generation platform, when we actually generated the code, we needed to package that and actually be able to deliver it to customers. So we had spent so much time building that we decided maybe this is something we could turn into a business. So at that particular time in 2015, package management was a lot more nascent, and there were far fewer players in the market. And
Were there any managed providers of package management back in 2015?
Yeah, there was. So it's not like we had done the thing of we'll just build it. Who cares about buying? And we're not really. I've never really been that kind of person where if something exists and it does a really good job, just bring it in. It's not your core competency, and certainly we didn't really set out to build that originally. But we'd evaluated sort of the players that were on the market at that particular time. I don't want to name any names, but one or two of them were still around. But we evaluated them as part of that startup number two, and none of them did everything that we wanted to do as part of this pipeline of building and and delivery and automation and cool APIs, things like that. So it's the whole reason we started to build it ourselves.
So one thing that I think is interesting about this is your story sounds pretty similar to other stories, but one in particular is how GitHub was founded. And for those of you who don't know, like GitHub was technology born out of another failed startup. I don't remember what it was called, but it was related to sharing photos with your family. And they built up all this back end services to make it easier to open what we call now pull requests and collaborate on source control. And when they're doing demos for their friends and family or other businesses, they're all, yeah, that's cool. Oh, by the way, can you show me that GitHub piece again? That looked really rad. Oh, could I have access to that? Could I? So I kind of see what you've done with Cloudsmith is you built a lot of this technology to back one of your first startups. That didn't quite work out, but you were able to pivot and spin some of that out into this new thing, which is Cloudsmith, and that's been going for the last 5 years.
Yeah, that's exactly described pretty much exactly what happened, because in actuality we failed to sell the thing that we were building, and it was the other bit where people were like, oh, show me the automated builds and the pipeline delivery. That's the cool bit. So we rebootstrapped it again in 2016. Completely started the business. Nothing was left from the prior startup, and we raised I think our seed fund last year, and here we are now, sort of growing month over month. And hitting 2021. stronger than ever before with, I think is a world-class package management service.
So one of the annoying things for me with this was we started with a more esoteric Linux distribution, Alpine Linux, very popular for containers. And when I started this, I couldn't find a single managed service to do Alpine package hosting. So we found something called Alpinist. It was a Lambda that we just deployed, and it seemed to work well until we realized when we were uploading packages with high concurrency, our indexes were getting corrupted, and it just wasn't easy to solve. So then, fast forward, GitHub releases their package hosting service, which is cool, but they're solving the same thing that's been solved. Like they host packages that there are a lot of providers out there already offering. What to me stood apart from Cloudsmith was the number of package formats you guys support. And do you have that number off the top of your head?
I believe it's a 22 today, and there's sort of like
Wow.
variants of top level
Yeah.
packages as well. So for example, like Maven and Gradle and and SBT are all compatible. So it's actually more than 22 if you think about technologies
Yeah.
that are compatible, and more on the way.
But it's like, yeah, and it's easily like all your Perl, your Ruby modules, your Python modules, you even support the Terraform registry format now, I think.
Yeah, we
Right?
do. That's
Yeah.
right.
So you can, yeah, it's really a one-stop shop for everything, and
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
We've also got a couple, and we were able to, and marketing love this sort of thing. But if you build anything that you can announce as sort of like the world's first whatever, and they love this,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
great.
yeah.
So we've built a couple of those already. Part of those were to scratch an itch. Part of those were because we're technologists. We love exploring different technologies. One of those is Rust. And although we haven't built the service on Rust, it's an area that we're starting to sort of we like to explore. And we were one of the first private providers of private repositories for the Rust ecosystem for the cargo packaging format as well.
Yeah.
So last year we were able to come out and go, hey, now everybody can get their own privatized repository for Rust, and it's brilliant, to be able to
That
offer
is
that.
cool. Yeah, I think it's really good to also get close to those various communities, which become big advocates for what you have. Just like, I mean, the fact is, the fact is that you're on this office hour session is because we use Cloudsmith, and that's why I think it's great to have you here. So another thing that I thought was really cool for us, Cloud Posse has, if you go to github.com/cloudposse/packages, we have our distribution of packages. And for the longest time, like, okay, we're building the packages for Alpine 3.11, and then 3.12, and then 3.13, and then 3.14. And then, it's like every time there's a new release, we got to do that. And then we had to release the packages for all those every single time because we have customers using different versions of Alpine Linux. That was such a pain. And one of the rad things that you guys had was the ability to create like any version package or any release package, right? So we can release our version of some tool. Let's say it's Terraform 0.14, and you guys can repackage that so it works for every release of Alpine Linux. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really common problem that people have whenever it comes to packaging. There's so many different ways of doing things and so many different things that you have to think of whenever you actually do it to do it right. And and Linux-based distributions have this thing where it's quite tricky to do that. You got to tackle many different ecosystems, many different distributions, many different versions. So anything that you can do to simplify that and make it easier for people, it's a big win. And we've felt that pain, from the other side many times in other companies we've worked at. And so it was, it's sort of an obvious thing in hindsight. It's like, of course we should support that, because sometimes you build and you don't care about the particular distro. So it's kind of like a distro-less deployment. It's like, this will work regardless of what version it is.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Also, just managing keys became a pain for us since those are sensitive, and all the packages require signing, and having your service manage those keys was good for us. So, what are some of the most common use cases that you see for a service like Cloudsmith? I mean, Cloud Posse has our use case. We have our tools that we need to distribute to our customers. But what are maybe some of the more common use cases that you see?
Yeah, we see patterns between all the kind of people that come on to utilize Cloudsmith, and it always boils down into sort of three pillars, three buckets, whatever you want to call it. So the first is development and isolation. where users are primarily developers and they're sharing libraries and they're trying to either isolate themselves from the external world. So you build software, you depend upon 100 pieces of software, and they depend upon 100 pieces of software. It gets pretty unwieldy over time. And if you're pulling those from many, many different services, then if you're relying upon those whenever you're in deployment and they're down at deployment, then you're going to have some issues around that. And then there's other things as well, such as people pulling versions and all sorts of nastiness that can happen. It's chaotic, right? So people want to control that. The second is deployments, and it's basically where people are building pipelines and they're delivering, and they want to basically control that delivery from developers through to the people who want to perhaps keep that onto servers, and that's a sort of internal usage. And then the third variant of that is a little bit similar, except for it's external, and it tends to be like vendors or people like yourself who are distributing not to their own team, but to the world at large. And basically, we help people with worldwide distribution for that. And we've had a huge amount of success around building pipelines for vendoring and people that are looking to sell software.
Are there any big names you can drop? I know sometimes that stuff's confidential, but anything you can share, like vendors using Cloudsmith?
Yeah, so I had to go and ask to make sure that I was allowed to say this ahead of time. We do go and ask for things like testimonials, and it's like, hey, it'd be nice if we could mention your name. So there are a couple we can say. Font Awesome, I think, is one of the most obvious ones.
Oh wow,
it's a really popular
cool
glyph set. It's sort of utilized worldwide, and we love Font Awesome. It's such a great product, and we've used it. We actually backed it years ago because we really believed in it. And we were able to put Cloudsmith as a logo into the glyph set. And whenever they became a customer for ours, they said, hey, maybe we could put you into the glyph set. And we said, oh, we're there already. And they were quite surprised.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of a Hollywood star now. Like
yeah, it's like, oh, because you only see it whenever you know it, sort of thing. The other one that I really like to talk about is ISC. So yeah, they are the Internet Systems Consortium, I believe, and they're the developers, or at least the current torchbearers for binding Kia. And I like to make the joke that they are literally powering the internet via DNS. So we help them with distribution. They have a support enhanced product that they offer on top of their open source code, and they sell that effectively. We help distribute the professional support edition for them for that. Yeah, there are others that I can't mention, but you would know the names if I said them. But it involves electric vehicles, smart homes, 3D printers, game studios, and even quantum mechanics hardware. Not all at the same time, though. They're all different businesses.
That's cool. Very cool. So, what do you? I mean, like, I get excited about package managers because it's a problem we have, but most people don't. But maybe what would be interesting is like, what is maybe the trajectory of package management, and why is it maybe coming back into vogue, and why people might want to care about it, and what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more. I mean, and it's always very obvious answers and nothing too surprising in this. But as the rate of software increases over time, we're building more and building faster, and things like CI and CD are helping us being able to actually build those things and deliver them. But what about things like being able to inject security into the pipeline and help managing the control of taking the software from the developers through packaging and out to delivery, and be able to put some standardization around that pipeline. So people are coming to us and they're basically asking for help around this. One, to help define the standards, and two, to help set the control within companies so they can sort of roll it out as a single source of truth for the software within the company and also external to it as well. So I think we'll see a lot more companies starting to pick this up, and we've been pressured to come up with a term like continuous delivery. The thing that we set upon was continuous packaging, because that forms part of the process of packaging it for development and being able to keep that same package and promote it all the way through to production. So it's about applying those same principles at every stage of the pipeline. So yeah, we're going to see a lot more of that, and a lot more of security built around the process of doing that too.
So a term I hear coming out a lot more nowadays is this thing like shift left security. What does that mean actually, and what's your role in like supporting that?
Yeah, so we definitely complement that and support that. The reason why that term came about was that security, I think, used to be quite a bit of an afterthought unless you were in the security domain. I think at some point people were surprised, like, hey, what exploits? What is that? And people could actually manipulate software to do things that it shouldn't do. So the shifting security to the left thing is really, if you imagine the right of whatever the right is the end bit where the customers are utilizing the piece of software, and the left all the way over is the point in time at which developers are producing the software. That's a pathway from the left to the right, from source to delivery. So shifting security to the left is about saying introducing security at the core principles of building the software. So GitHub, for example, is fantastic for this. There's other people out there, such as Sneak, that offer security at the left, where it's like, hey, scan the software as you produce it and put it in and try to catch problems at that point in time before they're actually introduced. So we're slightly beyond that, so we help people as part of the full pipeline of delivery. And, so we would say we're basically in the mid chain of that. So after you've secured things at the source, what about things whenever you integrate third-party dependencies into your product? So we help people scan them at that point in time, and you can control your source, but you can't necessarily control the third parties. You have to be very, very careful to ensure you do like upgrades carefully, or whenever you do integrate a new piece of third-party software, you need to make sure that that's scanned, for example, and there's no known vulnerabilities, and being able to package it all together and sort of scan it as a holistic, cohesive unit. So that's what that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, so I think it's even relevant in this age where so Docker has become a pretty common packaging system, even though it does a lot more than packaging, of course. But even if you use Docker, you're installing a lot of packages there, and where do those packages come from? And can you catch vulnerabilities or CVEs even before you're even building your images with your packaging system? The other thing is you might have lots of different kinds of images, right, that leverage those packages coming from your repositories. So scanning containers is great, but you can shift left further, right? You can shift left to even before the packages are created that you use in your containers. And I guess that's another way, another way of looking at exactly what you said.
Yeah.
So let's see. One of the things I wanted to address is kind of like what we've dealing with packages is it's a dirty business. Like there's so many inconsistencies with apps and how to test them and how to distribute them. There are, you have to sometimes run some scripts, before you install the package or before you install the binaries and then after. And there are inconsistencies between versions of RPMs or registries. And what are some of the hardest non-trivial things that you've had to dealing with package management at scale, and why you wouldn't recommend anybody try and do it themselves?
It's a mucky business.
Yeah.
I think, do you mean to ask about the active package management itself, or sort of like running a package management service?
Probably like both. I mean, both sides of it. Like, for example, the issue we had running our own package hosting service was using a Lambda to generate the indexes, signing packages, and uploading them to S3, and then doing that concurrently, only to realize we were corrupting our indexes. That was like one of the things something that seems so easy was so hard. And another thing that was hard for us is like so many of these tools for hosting a package repository for yourself assume you have your 200 gigs of packages locally on one server and you can just rerun the indexes, and they don't assume that you're using S3 or object store to host your packages. Those are just some of the things off the top of my head I think about. Like, I'm sure you guys have had other ones that, well, you had to solve a whole bunch of things. For us, when we migrated to Cloudsmith, we were using one format for our repository layout, but that wasn't exactly your format, yet you were able to support these slight changes very quickly. So I guess you guys have had to build in the support for a lot of exceptions in your platform.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of the matter. Just like any software, there's so much variety, and there's that joke about the standards, and the current standards are not good enough. So hey, let's just create a new standard, and then you've got now 18 standards, right? So this keeps happening. So being able to anticipate and handle all those special edge cases, and I think it's something that a lot of people didn't appreciate unless they tried it themselves. So for something like Cloudsmith, we're there to help handle all the edge cases of actually doing the delivery and just get it right, and also to make sure that we support things like signatures, signing, checksums in a very, very standardized way, and offer tooling that feels the same no matter what you're uploading. So Eric, whenever you were integrating with Cloudsmith, and we said, hey, just use the Cloudsmith CLI, and it offers like a uniform, nice interface to upload. At least I hope so. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But whenever you moved, and I know that you were looking at supporting like Debian packages and perhaps Red Hat and things like that down the line, that actually the tooling from your perspective was pretty similar. And there's enough there in terms of what we check for whenever you upload it that it's quite difficult to actually upload a package that's been corrupted or not built in the right way for Cloudsmith. So we're kind of like a quality control for that as well, and to help that the things that you publish in the Cloudsmith are things that can actually be properly consumed by people that want to consume them. Yeah, but it's just I think the main thing is you don't need to run it yourself. I think, and it's the managed service. It's the same. I don't need to be talking about package management itself. But for anything like this, if you don't need to build it, just don't do it. Stick within your core competencies in your domain. You'll be a lot happier.
There's a few of those core technologies like CICD. I rather not manage it. I rather it just exist and we can assume that it's there. And packaging is one of those things. Terraform automation is more and more another one of those things, kind of related to the CI/CD. Monitoring is more and more one of those things, like Prometheus and Grafana. It's open source and free, but it ain't free to manage and keep it working and up to date. So behind the scenes, what does your tech stack look like to manage all this infrastructure? Where are you hosted? How are you managing your deployments yourselves and scaling the product itself?
Yeah, so some of it's utterly boring and some of it's edgy, and some of it's edgy, and yes, that is a pun, but we're primarily built within AWS, which is not too surprising because we don't make it a secret. We were multiple region, and we're on distributed setup to try and facilitate, sort of worldwide distribution and make it feel sort of like local rate latency, no matter where people are in the world. So we lean on a lot of AWS-based technologies to achieve that part of our cloud nativeness, which is really just a fancy way of saying takes advantage of the cloud and runs well there. There's nothing really more than beyond that.
But so are you using EKS or Lambdas or RDS, DynamoDB? We're a technical crowd here, so
yes. So we are a combination of things. So we utilize ECS, Fargate, Lambda. A lot of our things, for example, we take advantage of Lambda at Edge at the AWS Cloud Front. We try to do these things on the edge because there's tricky things around like caching, and you would know yourself, Eric, because you built something that's
similar.
Yes, does very similar things, but there's some unsurprising things in there in terms of we utilize EFS for scratch spaces, which are multi-AZ and first reach and everything else as well. S3, EC2, we're actually not Kubernetes, although it's something that we're exploring and looking at. And there's probably more EC2 based stuff there than we'd like, although there's obviously a lot of container things too. But some of the things that we built whenever we originally built the company were kind of it was a lot more vanilla, sort of pre-Docker, Chef plus EC2 plus Packer, in its early days as well for actually building it. Some of that technology still remained because that's what happens to companies. But as we go over time, we're looking at that kind of going, that could do with a new lick of paint. But in terms of the actual code itself, we're predominantly Python, hearing hiss and boos from some people, but Python, Django, Celery, but we also have a lot of integrations with other types of things in the ecosystem as well. So there's all sorts of languages there. If you look very, very closely, you'll find things like, things written in Go, for example, as well. And as we start to explore, other areas, like I said earlier, we're starting to think about things like Rust as a language as well too.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So what, let's see, what I was going to say here. So I think one of the last questions I have really prepared or thought of is what do you think are some of the major trends you're seeing in package management, or where do you see the future of package management on this, based on the real-time feedback you're getting from your customers, their usage of the platform? Are they using more and more package formats, for example?
Yeah, we definitely do. I think that it does depend upon the size of the company. Obviously, we see different trends and patterns, but certainly for the bigger size of companies where they, it's normally initiatives to try and make this thing uniform and introduce package management as a concept at a very high level, and then to roll that out across the rest of the organization. So, for example, MyOB is one of our, poster sort of companies that we're allowed to talk about as well. Whenever they migrated a couple of years ago to Cloudsmith, their teams were using lots of different technologies, lots of different solutions, some hodgepodge and some utilizing sort of like self-hosted software. So they basically they got rid of all of that and tried to unify it onto one platform, and sort of Cloudsmith sort of fit in for that. But we're seeing a lot more of that. Also, as dependent upon a single source of truth, and I think that there's been quite a lot of instability this year with a lot of the public registries that are out there. And I think we've seen a lot of people come to us and ask
Docker
more
Hub.
about isolation. Yeah, there's and all the things around rate limiting and and people being concerned about, hey, is that going to disappear as a source for me? So I think there's been definitely an insuring, offshoring, what's the right term? People bringing things in so that they can control. So although they don't want to actually run the services themselves, which is the smart move, right? They still want to be able to have their own private cache of this world of software.
Does Cloudsmith support pull-through cache for Docker now, or not yet?
So not yet, but it is top. It is on. My favorite phrase is it's on the roadmap, and it is. So we're doing a lot with Docker, and I would say it's one of those things that are quite hot. The things that we support at the minute are Debian, Red Hat, Maven. We're currently looking at and working on npm and Python, and it's like anything else in the system. Once you've built one, and we can apply the rest of the expertise that we have with our package formats, it makes it a lot easier to roll it out for the rest of them. So Docker is absolutely one that's on there.
And just to be clear, what you just said there, that you have pull through cache for npm today, then you're saying, and Debian and RPM, or that's cool. Right. So it's definitely useful for all those other package formats that are common. And you can basically set the life cycle of those cached objects and how long your system persists it.
That's right. We make it feel like it's part of the normal process for putting packages in the Cloudsmith. So whenever you're pulling something through from an external source, they then become a sort of first-class package that exists within Cloudsmith, and you can still control it in all the same cool ways that you can do with any other package that's there.
That's really nice. And then with any upcoming security scanning and CV stuff, eventually I guess that'll tie into that. So even packages you pull through your cache possibly are getting scanned then, or?
Absolutely. Security is part of the process, right? And like I said earlier, we're sort of part of that mid-chain right through to delivery, and we want to help people identify security vulnerabilities at that point in time as well. So Docker scanning is there today. We're looking at introducing that across the rest of the package formats. Some of that might be powered via external integrations. We're not looking to rebuild the world ourselves. Basically, we're in talks with people for partnerships too. So if anybody here is listening to that and they're in this domain and are looking for partnership, come and talk to us. We want to integrate the ecosystem, not replace it.
That makes sense. So I'm out of questions. I thought we should turn it over to the audience if anybody has any questions there. Otherwise, Lee, you can feel free to jump in if there's anything else you want to share. So anybody in the community, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question about what Cloudsmith does, or if it has some capability maybe that you want. Or
it just does it all.
It just does it all. Yeah. All right. Well, Lee, any other things you thought of you'd want to share?
Yeah, I think finally for me, for Cloudsmith in 2021, so expect to see a lot more sort of high-powered partnerships and integrations with some of the other top-tier vendors that are coming out. We've got a webinar, for example, coming out in January with Circle CI and HashiCorp, which is a trifecta of awesomeness. So don't miss that.
Oh wow!
And we're really, really excited about that because we love Circle CI. We build upon them. I didn't mention this earlier, but we utilize a lot of HashiCorp products, a lot of Circle CI for the things that we do for our automation, deployment, infrastructure as code as well. So we love those people, and we're really, really excited to basically bring a webinar out there that talks about the concept of security holistically in the pipeline as well. But that's pretty much it for me. The only other thing that I have was that we're also hiring. So if you're super interested in this, if you think that Cloud, Python, package management, those are your domain, come and help us build it.
Yeah, that's cool. So I know you shared with me a couple links for everyone else. How to use GitLab to publish packages to Cloudsmith. You have a general YouTube video how to do it. I'll share also Cloud Posse, if you go to Cloud Posse packages, this is how we use Cloudsmith. If you go to the GitHub folder, we have our package template workflow here. So this is how we're building our packages for Alpine, RPM, Debian, etc. And ultimately, if I just search for Cloudsmith in here, you'll see how this GitHub action uses the official Cloudsmith.io GitHub action to push packages there. So you can really get up and running very quickly if you want package hosting. Also, just point out, this, you see this any version thing here? That's what I was talking about. That's how easy it is to release our packages now for any version of Alpine Linux, for example. And we do the same thing for Debian and RPM. Does anyone maybe have any questions about the GitHub Actions and how we did package management for that using Cloudsmith?
It's a well-informed audience, Eric.
Very well informed. They've heard me talk about this a lot before. Package. I tend to drop Cloud Posse packages a lot. So yeah, Cloud Posse packages is this is a Cloud Posse tool chain, and the reason why, so when we got started at Cloud Posse, we have another thing we call GD6, so GitHub Cloud Posse GD6, and this is just a glorified Docker container. It's it's how we run our tool chain. And when we started doing this, and we started with Alpine, and we would just do things that looked very much like this. We would curl binaries in from a bunch of different sources. We would pin the versions, and that worked for a while until it didn't, until we needed to manage so many different packages pinned at so many different versions. We realized that let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not turn Docker into a package manager. Let's actually just do the tried and true method. So that's why we decided, let's just centralize all the tools that we depend on. We can version those separately. We can automatically open pull requests to update these packages on a nightly basis. So we get all of our packages updated, this was updated 4 days ago automatically, 20 hours ago, 20 hours ago. And all these packages now go to Cloudsmith. So we run one simple little GitHub action that just publishes that package to Cloudsmith, and we're golden.
I'd be quite interested, Eric, to see putting the Docker containers through the scan as well. If the output is an artifact, it's what does that look like in terms of scanning the ecosystem of packages that are built into it?
In our case, we just went with Docker Hub strategically because it's the default for pulling images for everyone. But with the rate limiting concerns and things like that, we maybe need to look for a official Docker host that won't be rate limiting users. Especially since we use a lot of these things in a CI context, it's easy to imagine that you hit rate limits on Docker Hub.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Anybody in the audience? So let me share in the Office Hours channel a couple of these links here. So if you are interested, check it out. You'll know where to go. And go to Office Hours here. If you haven't joined our Slack community yet, you can go to slack.cloudposse.com. And you'll find the conversation in there. Also, I forgot to check our Office Hours channel. Maybe somebody posted some questions there. So there were some links there. And a couple of other announcements. If package management is something you want to check out and try out, feel free to submit this type form here, and you'll get an extended trial. When you sign up, I think a full month trial. That's better than a lot of vendors do. And free socks, because who doesn't need another pair of socks? Cool. Let me scan the channel here, see if there's anything related to what we're talking about today. We can help answer.
I just want to say that whenever Cloud Posse and Cloudsmith both IPO, those stocks are going to be worth a lot of money. So keep them. You should sign up now.
This is an investment in your retirement.
Yes.
Yes.
And all we're asking for is $100 up front. I'm just joking.
No, just your email. Yeah, so this is a question here we'll probably get to. Unfortunately, not for a couple of weeks, because next week we also have a special edition office hours. Usually we're answering just any questions that come up along the way. Do you have a self-hosted version of Cloudsmith, or is it strictly SaaS? Any enterprise being self-hosted?
We do get asked quite a lot. We've been quite obstinate in this, in that we might come up with something in the future that is perhaps a little bit more hybridized, but actually we are 100% cloud only.
Yeah.
I think we wouldn't be treated the name if we weren't cloud based. So
yeah.
We'd have to rename ourselves to Hybrid Smith, or on-premises Smith, or
Zero Smith,
like that. Zero Smith. Yes.
I'm just joking, because there's a company, Zero SSL. I love what they do, and they provide total SSL, but their name is Zero SSL. I don't get it.
Yeah. Zero Trust? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, Zero Trust. Yeah, okay. Maybe that's what they're playing with. Yeah, it's the first time I thought it was maybe related to the Zero Trust. Okay.
Yeah, but I would never say never. So you never know what's going to happen. A lot of the time people come to us, they're looking to move away from self-hosted for a lot of obvious reasons, but there's always heavily regulated industries and air gap situations where people don't have access or don't have the rights to run within the cloud, and I feel really sorry for them. So if that's you out there, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I've personally worked in a couple of those environments. So something where you would be able to, say, deploy some sort of an endpoint into your own VPC to then get to your packages via Cloudsmith would be probably interesting to those industries.
Yeah, I have to admit there has been some investigation to offer like a private connector type approach, where it's not really a full fat in your VPC cache, but it would be basically via private communications, VPN, for example, or utilizing one of the AWS services to do so, where it's VPC to VPC instead. And that's something that we might potentially, investigate, especially as we bring more people on board and can investigate. Have people dedicated to looking into that. But yeah, that could be quite interesting.
Yeah, and the other reason that's also attractive is if you're in a very large environment that provisions a lot of things very frequently, the bandwidth charges of constantly pulling those packages over the wire get to be pretty expensive as well. So
yeah.
That's an interesting idea, like having a local agent you run in your VPC, but it's offloading the complexity in the management to Cloudsmith, but using that agent model, like Terraform Cloud agents, GitLab agents, CodeFresh agents, etc. You need the Cloudsmith agent.
Yeah, and I think I said it earlier on. We're not looking to displace all of the ecosystem. You can still utilize, there's off-the-shelf and open source tools to set up caches on your side, but keep Cloudsmith as the central source of truth. But if you want to minimize the bandwidth usage, run a cache, and that's absolutely fine. We're native compatible with all of those package formats.
But it's not easy. It's not easy being like a Docker pull through cache. It's not easy being a cache for all the package formats. So
true. That is true.
If I could go to the AWS marketplace and subscribe to the Cloudsmith pull through cache and turn it on in my account, that would actually be like a really big win. Like in that case.
Yeah.
Furiously writing this down is next thing to do. It is. We have talked about it, and I think it would be fantastic.
I'll only charge you $100 in a pair of socks.
I'm taking that. That is now on record. So thank you, Matt.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions out there? We got another 10 minutes or so on the books, so if you have anything you want to talk about. All right. Well, let's see.
I had one thing. This is Eric Berg.
Hey,
Uh,
Eric.
hey, it's kind of a follow-up to the whole YAML configuration thing. And I was bitching about validations and IDE completions for using YAML. And the workaround that I put in place was to have my main module pull the YAML and then feed it to
Yeah,
sub
yeah, yeah, yeah,
modules.
exactly. No, that works well, relatively well.
It
Yeah.
freaking totally well. It was like
Yeah.
this is one of those. This is a rare like 4 o'clock in the morning thing this past weekend because I was like, wait a minute, I know exactly what to do. Gave me the completion in PyCharm and the validation that I so desperately seek. So I just want to throw that out there.
No, that's good. Yeah, and that's kind of been our model. Sorry, guys, this is a slight segue from the Cloudsmith
Sorry, I
conversation.
thought that you were opening it up at this point.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe we do. I took your bait, hook, line, and sinker. So I was just going to share. So that was one of the motivations for how we composed our Terraform modules, so that we create one module whose interface is native Terraform, and then we create a component, which is how we use our modules, that consumes YAML and passes that to the Terraform. But Matt was actually suggesting something else to us recently, which is using JSON schema. And that is supported by every major IDE out there. You can run command line validation of JSON schema, and then you can have also schema validation on your YAML files. So that's kind of cool.
Cool.
Let's see. Lee, any questions that you have for the community, or questions you'd be interested for feedback on?
Yeah, I mean, we do talk to almost everybody that comes on to utilize the service, but everybody's experience is varied and different. But has anybody like encountered any real stinkers, in terms of like, package management, package and setting up and delivery, that you think, hey, something like this could have actually helped me in a pickle here?
Well, one of our customers recently had the challenge of like, how do they distribute their software, but not publicly. So licensed software. Is that a use case you guys solve?
Absolutely. So vendor-based distribution, and it's something that we see a lot more of, and sometimes people don't really think about the act of distribution. Hey, we'll just put it in an FTP and make that available to people. And it's like, and that works, but it doesn't really work necessarily at scale. And it certainly doesn't work whenever you start to do tricky things like, maybe I only want to offer a segment of my customers access to a segment of the product. For example, imagine that you had a standard edition, pro edition, and enterprise edition, and you want to start segmenting those customers for distribution. So the people who pay for standard get that alone, and then so on and so forth for the rest of them. So we have customers that set up these distribution pipelines and programmatically manage their entire customer base via Cloudsmith. So they've set up, it's basically access tokens, right? It's basically we have associating a customer's license with a particular access token in Cloudsmith, and then you can do all kinds of cool things like, hey, this customer is only allowed access for all the 1.0 range, for example. So they've bought 1.0, but they don't get access to 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, or things like time-based as well, where it's like, hey, they've bought it for a year, and then that's it, and we'll help you control that. And we'll just take that into your hands. You don't need to worry about the active enforcement for those things or revoking those access tokens. We'll just handle it as part of the process. That's one of the things we offer and help people with.
That's cool. I didn't know that was supported, and that extends to other things like even Docker, maybe.
It does indeed. It is universally supported for every single packaging format the Cloudsmith supports.
Wow. Terraform registry?
Yep. As long as it is a package of some sort within Cloudsmith, you can associate metadata with the package, and then you can select. And it's sort of like we've got a very, very powerful search system at Cloudsmith. It's Boolean. We do all sorts of crazy things with it, and all the attributes that are available in packages. If you can search for it, then that means you can identify packages, and that means you can entitle for a segment of that particular repository. So yeah, there's all sorts of interesting things you could be doing. If Eric, you told me at some point that there was a super powered edition of the Cloudsmith, of the Cloud Posse tools that was offered to a segment of the market, it would completely surprise me, and it would be something that Cloudsmith could help you with.
On the, I actually have a question on the on the Terraform registry that you provide. So
Sure.
this is, so for everyone like who uses Terraform, there's like registry.terraform.io, right? And this is a public registry. Anyone can publish their modules here. Cloud Posse, we have our modules here as well. When you use the Cloudsmith registry, what are the benefits to using the public registry here, and what are some of the other things that you can do with it?
So the benefits of using Cloudsmith as a registry versus the
Yeah,
public one, or
yeah,
it's the same reason anybody else is looking to put packages in the Cloudsmith. It's partially for control reasons, partially for visibility, partially because it's a single source of truth, and then at some point we'll offer things like being able to synchronize with upstreams as well. But for example, if you wanted to put controls around who could potentially publish new modules, then you could do that with Cloudsmith as well. And the HashiCorp tooling is fantastic, so if you want to remain within that domain and they're the experts of that, that's fine. But there's definitely a segment of customers that want to be able to do all that within Cloudsmith as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But we've also got a provider too.
So I'm admittedly not that familiar with the Cloudsmith tooling, because I take advantage of all the great automation that we've had set up here at Cloud Posse. But what is how available are like usage statistics from a reporting perspective? So if I wanted to know like what my most popular packages are, or in that commercial model where you were saying by like customer access, can I tell like how many times a particular customer downloaded a particular package, et cetera, something along those lines?
Absolutely, so, and I think that's part of the empowering the customer aspect for vendor-based distribution, but you can apply that internally as well. And, instead of customers, maybe it's developers, teams, servers, even to identify. And we help people in terms of both aggregate, in terms of like, the total amount of bandwidth utilized across a period of time, but also like specifics around like which specific access token had access specific software. And you can trace it down into, the particular downloads that occurred. So we surface all that. We also have like APIs and a CLI to help get all that aggregate and summary and detailed information as well. And we keep building upon that because people keep on asking us about it. So we're just giving people what it is that they wanted. But yeah, that's absolutely a possibility.
I realized that we should have probably just done a brief showcase of what it does, but we only have 5 minutes left. So, but this kind of answers a little bit of Matt's question, and I don't mind sharing this. So this is our Cloud Posse repository on Cloudsmith, and you can see all of our 3,000. Well, this is all versions, I guess, of all packages that are uploaded here in the package groups. But what we lacked when we were self-hosting is we didn't have any of the statistics of how our packages were being pulled and used. Now, these are a little bit inaccurate from our perspective. We actually stuck Cloudflare in front of it, so these are going to be a fraction of the actual stats. But that's what I liked. And let's see what was happening here. Statistics. So here you can see, for each month, how many downloads we had. So in December this month, we had 18,000 package downloads. That's non-cached package downloads, and how it breaks down. So it looks like, it's a little down this month, but last month it was, it's the beginning of the month. So last month, 175 gigs, etc.
People ask us about this as well. It's like, we're, I think by definition, mostly back-end engineers. I think if I went around the meeting and asked people, if you're an engineer, what do you identify as? It was like, you work full stack, but you always have a preference between one and the other. So the UI element of it, we've always perceived as functional enough. And actually, it's the APIs and the CLIs and programmatic access and the native protocols and all that are the real strength with Cloudsmith. I think, in 2021, part of our harm will be we'll bring in more front-end people that'll probably want to torch the landscape. As front-end people love to do that, then that's fine.
It's gotten pretty colorful. It's a pretty colorful UI, but there's a lot of information packed into it. I like.
Yeah, it's the engineer's view. So if you're a visual front-end designery person, you'll probably dislike it, but you'll appreciate the functionality.
Yeah. And you can drill into any one of your packages, and you see it's distributed for Alpine, for Debian, and for Red Hat. So that's cool. It was when all this stuff was on S3, it wasn't this pretty.
Yeah, and that's something people ask us as well. Actually, someone asked me the question: ARM64 platforms? Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the packet, if you mean the packaging itself, we're fairly agnostic to particular architectures. So it's really up to you about how you define what the packaging is, what architecture it's built for. We don't really look at it from that perspective. We really are very agnostic, and so whenever we're processing the packages, we're not running the software, and so the architecture itself doesn't actually matter.
Because ultimately the packages are just tarballs, or a lot of them are tarballs or similar kind of zip formats or portable formats that are architecture agnostic.
Yeah, there's some very strange ones as well, but that's another conversation.
For sure. Any other? We're nearing the end of the session here. Any other questions? Also, I didn't check the Zoom chat. Let's see here. Okay, that's where you saw that. Thanks. Cool. All right. Well, I think I will start to wrap things up here. Lee, thank you so much for your time today and going over the Cloudsmith product. I really encourage anybody who has had this problem to check it out. I have no regrets switching over to Cloudsmith for Cloud Posse. They provide a lot of links for, their documentation is really good. I followed it to get our stuff up and running. We have a Cloudsmith channel. Now, I'm sure Lee doesn't appreciate providing support through Cloud Posse sweetops channel, but if you have any quick questions, feel free to reach out to them in the Cloudsmith channel, and they're happy to answer things for you there. So with that said, Lee, any final closing thoughts that you'd like to bring up before I do my closing down spiel?
No, other than thank you very much for the chat. I really, really enjoyed it. And if there's anybody out there listening and you're not doing package management, please consider doing so. It'll change your life.
Yep, that sounds good to me. All right, so remember to register for our weekly office hours if you haven't already. You'll do that by going over to cloudposse.com/office hours. If you want to share this recording with members of your team, maybe some of your QA engineers would find it interesting. Feel free to give them the channel on YouTube, which is youtube.com/c/cloudposse. We have our Slack team at slack.cloudposse.com or cloudposse.com/Slack. They both go to the same place. And look forward to seeing you guys around on next week's office hours. Remember, next week we have a session booked with HashiCorp, N0, Scalar, Spacelift, and we're talking about tacos. And I mean Terraform, automation, and collaboration software. So that's going to be really interesting. We have an hour and a half allocated to going over that with all the vendors, and we'll see you guys next week at the same place and same time. Adios.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.